Just trying to find the link here,
sure.
because if you're focusing in on this one issue today, we're talking about knife crime crisis, and I'm just trying to find out what the actual link is between school exclusions and knife crime.
It's one of the issues we're focusing on. The HMIB, the Prisons Inspectorate, recently said that when they visited secure training centres, young offenders institutions, 9 out of 10 people in custody, you want to make sure that education of the vast majority of children is not made worse by a disruptive child or a violent child. But also the Children's Commissioner and Ofsted have expressed concern about this issue of off-rolling.
London's knife crime epidemic has reached a breaking point, with over 15,000 knife-related offences reported in 2024 alone. The city is crying out for solutions, but when presented with a concrete plan to recruit 1,000 new police officers, Mayor Sadiq Khan's response left many Londoners stunned. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. In a shocking display of political partisanship, Khan dismissed the proposal outright, stating, "As a rule of thumb, I never encourage anyone to work with reform." Is this the leadership London deserves in the face of a crisis? Or has Khan's political agenda overshadowed the urgent need for public safety?
We're concentrating on knife crime. This is after a 4th fatal stabbing in the space of just 6 days. And there are now calls for the Prime Minister to put 10,000 police officers back onto the streets.
A number of things we're doing, notwithstanding the challenges we have. City Hall have funded a violent crime task force, 300 officers who are targeting high knife crime areas. By the massive cuts we've had in our police officer numbers, but also massive cuts in youth services and preventative services as well. That's why we're lobbying the Prime Minister to step in and take a lead in this issue.
London's streets, once bustling with life and energy, now pulse with an undercurrent of fear. The knife crime crisis has cast a long shadow over the city, turning everyday activities into potential risks. Londoners find themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering if they'll be the next victim of a senseless attack. The numbers paint a grim picture. According to the Office for National Statistics, knife crime in London has surged by a staggering 21% in just 1 year. That's 13,503 blade offenses recorded in the year to June 2023. Let that sink in for a moment. Over 13,000 incidents involving knives in a single year. It's not just a statistic, it's a testament to a city gripped by violence. But what do these numbers mean for the average Londoner? The reality is stark. Parents now live in constant fear, dreading the possibility of receiving that heart-stopping call from school.
I just want to know why you're focusing on school exclusions. They've increased by 56% in the last 3 years, but where's the evidence that this is linked to the rise in knife crime?
But the point I make is the causes of the increase in violent crime are extremely complex, deep-seated problems. I'm not excusing criminality, poverty, social alienation, inequalities, mental health issues, issues around exclusions. A really good question. So we're not saying, nobody's saying that exclusions is the sole reason why there's been a massive increase in violent crime across the country.
Not the sole reason, but where is the link?
The one that says their child won't be coming home because they've been stabbed. It's a nightmare scenario that's become all too real for many families. Take the tragic case of Kellen Massa. This young life was brutally cut short in broad daylight, stabbed on a bus for all to see. It's stories like these that bring home the human cost of this epidemic. Families torn apart, communities shattered, all because of the senseless violence that's become all too common on London's streets. The fear is palpable. It's not just anecdotal, it's backed up by hard data. A recent survey revealed that 70% of Londoners rank tackling knife and gun crime as one of their top priorities. That's not just concern, that's a citywide cry for help. But here's where things get even more troubling. While London drowns in this wave of knife crime, other major UK cities are reportedly faring better. The contrast is stark, leaving Londoners to wonder, why us? What's going wrong in our city that isn't happening elsewhere? Some point to the closure of 70% of London's police stations due to austerity measures. A report suggests this has directly contributed to the rise in violent crime. Fewer police stations mean less visible policing, less community engagement, and longer response times. It's a recipe for disaster that's playing out on London's streets every day. So where do we go from here? Is there a solution to this crisis? And more importantly, who's responsible for fixing it?
Because it does seem like an odd thing to be focusing on when you talk about a plethora of issues, one of them being, tougher sentencing, the other being stop and search. Why are you focusing on school exclusions?
Well, in England and Wales in 2017, more than 7,000 children were excluded, an increase from 4,000 3 years before. So the point we're making is that...
7,000 children excluded, how many of them have gone on to commit knife crime?
So the point we're making is, if you look at Glasgow and Scotland, for example, in 2017, only one child was excluded because they had the resources and support to take measures before a child got to be excluded.
All eyes turned to City Hall, to the man at the helm of London's governance. Surely, in the face of such a dire situation, London's mayor has a comprehensive plan to tackle this epidemic head on. When it comes to tackling London's knife crime crisis, you'd think any proposal to boost police numbers would be met with open arms. But Mayor Sadiq Khan's response to a plan for recruiting 1,000 new officers has left many Londoners scratching their heads. Is this a case of putting politics before public safety? The proposal in question came from Reform UK, aiming to create a specialized knife crime task force. Their plan: fund the recruitment of nearly 1,000 police officers by trimming Khan's staffing budget to 2016 levels, potentially saving over $75 million. On paper, it sounds like a no-brainer for a city grappling with a surge in violent crime. Khan's response was as swift as it was surprising. As a rule of thumb, I never encourage anyone to work with reform, Khan stated, dismissing the proposal outright. It's a response that's raised eyebrows across the political spectrum. Are we really in a position to turn down help based on party affiliations when lives are at stake? London Assembly member Alex Wilson didn't mince words, accusing Khan of an arrogant dismissal of the knife crime task force proposal. It's a sentiment echoed by many who see Khan's refusal as a clear indication that tackling knife crime isn't at the top of his priority list. But is that fair? Khan has consistently pointed the finger at government cuts for rising crime rates. It's a narrative that's worn thin for many Londoners who are still waiting to see a cohesive plan to effectively tackle the issue. Critics argue that while Khan is quick to assign blame, he's been slow to present solution. The Prime Minister has weighed in, criticizing Khan's record on crime. He's highlighted a stark contrast. While other regions in the UK are seeing falling crime rates, London is failing to meet its police recruitment targets. It's a damning indictment of Khan's leadership on this issue. Experts have long emphasized the importance of adequate law enforcement presence in high crime areas. It's not rocket science. More police on the streets can have a direct impact on reducing crime rates. So why is London lagging behind? The shocking truth is that London stands alone as the only place in the UK not meeting its police recruitment targets. It's a statistic that should send shudders down the spine of every Londoner. While other cities are bolstering their police forces, London seems stuck in a cycle of violence and inaction. While London grapples with its knife crime crisis, it's worth looking at successful strategies from other cities. Glasgow, for instance, has made significant strides in reducing violence by adopting a public health approach. Their focus on early intervention and community support has yielded impressive results. But here's the kicker: these initiatives require political will and cooperation across party lines. So what's the holdup in London? As politicians engage in blame games and budget squabbles, the city's streets remain unsafe. It's high time Londoners demanded more than just lip service from their elected officials. The question is, how many more lives must be lost before concrete action is taken? In the end, it boils down to this: can London afford to let political point scoring take precedence over public safety? The clock is ticking, and the city's residents deserve better than excuses and finger pointing. It's time for leadership that prioritizes lives over votes.